Excellent. Okay, great, Michelle. So, prize winner, global prize winner, right, for the November 2022 SCS.
Correct.
Fantastic achievement, right?
Thank you.
So, remind me again, you were placed, right, globally. It was, do you remember the
Correct.
position or?
I came second.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, I'm very, very competitive by nature, but came second by a mark. So that's
okay. So have you previously won CIMA prizes?
Yeah, I did the management level case study in, I think, May 2019. I think May 2019, I wrote management level and I came fourth in that.
Okay. All right.
And then sort of skipped the strategic level objective tests. So I'm a CASA, so I actually get through the CA route. I can access the course at strategic level case study. But because at the university that I'm working at, I lecture on management level. So I decided originally that I was going to go in on management level so that I do the content and do the case study structure that my students would be writing so that I can better assist them. So did that process. And then life sort of happened and children, and then I never got to write my strategic level objectives. So then I applied for exemption for them according to the CA route, and then went and wrote the strategic level case study.
Okay. So you said you were CASA. Can you explain what that is?
So a chartered accountant, we're registered in South Africa. The professional body is known as CIMA. So it's the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. And it is quite internationally recognized. So CIMA accredits the CASA and gives us a specific pathway into the CIMA program. Okay.
And CASA, is it more focused on, would there be a focus on audit and taxation? Yeah, so that it's, so quite
the four pillars almost. So their main subjects is financial accounting, management accounting and finance, taxation and auditing.
Okay, so quite similar to ACCA or something like that, right?
Yes, very similar to the ACCA qualification, yeah.
Okay, so what drew you then to CIMA?
Well, when I was studying, management accounting and finance was by far my favorite subject. So that subject area has always been my passion. And then when I started lecturing at the university, we introduced a BCom Honors in Management Accounting program, which is accredited with CIMA. And because I was presenting and coordinating the program, I wanted to get the qualification as well. And that's why, well, in progress, I just need to finish my PR so that I could get the CGMA. But we'll get there. Okay,
very good, very good. So the operational level, that's entirely skipped out. You know, lots of exemptions and things there. And the objective tests at the management level, did you have to do any of those?
No, they also come through on an exemption. So I entered just at the management level case study and wrote that, and then skipped the strategic level objective tests and wrote the strategic level case study.
Okay, very good. And the students then that you're teaching the management case study to, right? They're university students?
Yes, yeah. So they're honors students. So they do an accounting degree, and then they do the honors in management accounting degree, which is aligned with CIMA. So they have 3 modules which are aligned with E2, P2, and F2. And then we prep them to write the management level case study. And then once they've passed the case study, they actually graduate with their BCom Honors in Management Accounting.
Okay. So at what stage of their accounting studies are these students? What year are they in? Or?
They're normally in their 4th year of study. So they'll do their three-year general accounting BCom degree, and then they'll do the honors with us.
Where do you see students struggling with the management case study? I know it's the focus of this particular interview is the SCS, but for the management case study, I'm sure there are plenty of things we can take from that too.
Yeah, my students, the biggest issue for my students, and I think it is probably more of an issue on my side, but it's the switch to the discussion approach to it. So BCom, an accounting degree, is very theoretical, very calculations, very, black and white almost. And then they get thrown into the management level case study where there's no calculations, and they've got to write what they want to answer, and that's where I feel they struggle the most. So a lot of students might know the theory. I think their knowledge is perhaps too basic, which is why they struggle with the discussion questions. But to articulate themselves, they struggle a lot as well.
It's I suppose it's I don't know if it's a misconception. I don't know if it's a misconception, but it certainly exists that accountants great with the numbers and all of that, but when it comes to the communication side of things, then they're struggling a little bit. Do you think that's a fair criticism in general of people doing accounting degrees and accounting qualifications like CIMA?
Totally. I think that's a very fair judgment call, and I think it is because of how the courses are structured. I think the courses are structured to focus students on the theory, whereas very little work is done, or very little focus is placed on soft skills, like the ability to communicate and the ability to write. A further problem by us is that we're sitting with probably 95% of my students aren't English first language. So they're writing in their second or third language, which automatically has got stumbling blocks.
Yes, that's something we see a lot as well. And honestly, I have huge admiration for the students whose language is not whose first language is not English. It's an added significant difficulty. Do you think any exemptions should be made there? Do you think there should be more time given to students whose language is not their first language is not English, for example?
I don't really think more time would help. I think in an ideal scenario, they should be writing in their home language, but I mean, that's just not practical. I mean, you can't have students writing in 100 languages, whatever language is available. So I think the world of work is English. I think, CIMA is obviously internationally recognized, so you need to be conversant in English. So I understand the reasoning behind it, but I think it is very difficult for the students. I think it's a stumbling block that they do need to overcome, because English is the language of the world. And I mean, if everybody is writing in English, everybody whose English is a second language is then on an equal playing field almost.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's a struggle, but once they come out the other side, they're in great shape. If they can get through these exams, it stands to them for the entirety of their careers, right? Would it be fair to say then that you're a fan of the case study concept?
Yeah. I had students actually in my office today. So I lecture undergrad as well. So now, our academic year runs until the end of October, and then they write their exams in November. So a lot of them are now panicking as to what they need to do next year. And they come to me and they say, must they do CIMA? And then I say, well, yes. And then the first question is, but, how are they going to pass the case study? And then, I'm the wrong person to ask, because I love the case study. I love the setup of it. I love the questions. I love prepping my students for the case study. So for me, it's irrelevant. I'm like, you've got to do it because it's awesome. But the students are very intimidated. Yeah.
There seems to be an anxiety around the case study. I was like yourself. I liked the case study exams more than the objective test exams. But I think for the most part, students prefer the objective test exams, and the case study just causes this anxiety. Okay. And All right. So could you tell me then a little bit about your career background? Have you ever worked in practice? Have you always worked in academia?
No, I finished my degree. It was my 3 years, and then my honors to do my CASA, so that we talk about the Bachelor of Accounting honors. So I did that in 2009, and then in 2010 I was a academic trainee at the university. So I did a year of my 3-year training contract. I did at the university in academia. I then went to PricewaterhouseCoopers for 3 years. And then finished my qualification. So we need for CISA, we need a 3-year practical experience, very similar to CIMA, but we've got like a list of competencies that you literally need to tick off in those 3 years. So qualified at PwC, and I then went into business as a financial manager of a very, very big transport company in Bloemfontein. A very, very successful transport company. So I was there for about 3.5 years, and then actually came back to the university as in the finance division. So I came in as an assistant director in the finance division, managing third stream income and commercial debtors. And then my love has always been academia. So there was a video that I watched quite a few years ago, which said, you need to decide if you want to be successful or significant. What are you going to give to the world, or what are you going to take from the world? And that always resonated with me, because I want to be significant. I want to change the lives of as many people as I can, rather than just being successful. Being successful always left that, is this it feeling. You can earn a lot of money and count everybody else's money, but is this it? Sure. And so when the position opened here for a lecturer in management accounting, I then came back to give class.
Okay. Do you feel then that you're meeting that requirement, the significance in academia?
I suppose everybody hopes so.
Yes.
I hope that I'm changing lives. I have undergrad, I had 600 students in my class, so I don't necessarily think all 600 of them are changed people coming out of my lectures. But I'm hoping here or there, I'm guiding or redirecting or instilling a love for the subject area in some of my students.
Very good. Do you feel then that academia is the fit for you?
I think for now, yes. Academia gives me that sense of significance, and it gives me a lot of flexibility as well. So, I've got 2 small kids at home, so academia allows me to, my son was sick yesterday, so I had to take him to the doctor, and academia, or the setup here at the university, allows that. Whereas in corporate, they're not going to say, you're sure, go take him to the doctor. You're going to have to arrange for someone, to handle that. So that flexibility now is perfect. The academia, I'd like to be more involved in the CIMA program, probably internationally, because I feel the majority of the really good service or academic providers are overseas. But I think that will obviously come with experience and with time and everything.
Okay, very good. Okay, so let's get round to the strategic case study. So you started in November 2022. It was your first attempt? Correct.
Yeah, it was my first attempt, and I was coincidentally like 26 weeks pregnant. So it was a tough process.
Okay, yes, I can imagine. How roughly how many weeks or months did you spend preparing for the exam?
It's probably a little bit more extended, because I didn't do the objective test, so I still worked through those textbooks. So I worked through all 3 of the modules in detail. I would probably say I started in about June, July. We have a winter break in June, July. So I would have started about then, and then went through those 3 textbooks in detail. And then in about probably about September, I started prepping seriously for the strategic level case study. There was also a program that I did through CIMA for that gateway program. That helped a lot. So, we would have probably bi-weekly appointments where they would cover a section of the work and theory and do a few questions, and then you'd go off on your own and, prep for the next session and start with that.
Okay. So what was your approach then to the strategic objective theory? Were you reading textbooks, doing questions?
Yeah, for the 3 pillars, I went through those textbooks and then made the summaries of the work, and then actually went and studied them, as if I was going to write an objective test, obviously ignoring all of the calculations and the theory, or the calculation and the formulas. And then based on that, once that was completed, then I started looking at the total picture, or, the bigger picture, and started prepping for the case study. So in addition to that course that I did, it was previous case studies. I did a lot of previous case studies, and then it was the mock exams.
Sure. Okay. And so you mentioned summarizing the theories from the strategic objective tests. Any particular approach to how you summarize that information? Because the textbooks are obviously really, really dense, right?
Yeah, they are. And to filter through it, I think, becomes the problem for the majority of students, because there's just too much information. So what I did with the management level as well is, as I went through previous case studies, you get the idea of the type of question that's coming. Because the difficult thing I feel that students always is they don't know how they must study the theory. So you're studying this massive amount of theory, in essence, for 3 questions in the strategic level case study. And how do you approach that? So what I did is I made lists of models, and then just made sure that I understood what each of the models referred to and how they would relate to a question, almost how I could draw on that knowledge to answer a question, and then try to come up with strategies to answer certain types of questions. So ethics is going to be a question. I mean, it's got to come up somewhere. And what are they always looking for in an ethics question? And just almost a cheat sheet that I would come up with. Yeah.
Sure. The thing, I suppose, is there's a shift in mindset when you go from the objective test to the case study, right? Because it's very theory focused when you're on the objective tests, and of course theory is still important with the strategic case study, but it's theory applied. Yes. which is a different thing, and it's a slight shift in mindset that trips a lot of students up, it seems, right?
Yes, yeah. You say a slight shift in mindset. I mean, I think it's a totally new ball game, because they're not going to ask you for a specific model that you can refer to on a specific page in a textbook. You sort of need to use that one with 5 others to answer a question that doesn't even mention the model. So you really need this broad knowledge to answer a very specific question. And I think students are a lot of times unsuccessful because they don't even know what's being asked.
Yeah. So did you take a course, Michelle, for the SCS?
Yes, yeah. Like I said, there was one offered through CIMA itself for students on that gateway program.
Okay,
Yeah, and then so they gave us notes as well relating to a lot of the theory. So I worked through those in addition to the notes that I'd made on the 3 pillars, and then approached it in that way.
And mock exams, were they really important?
Yes, yeah. Mock exams, I feel, working through previous case studies and mock exams, I feel is how you pass a case study.
Sure. Roughly how many mock exams did you take ahead of the SCS?
The mock exams, I did 15.
Wow, okay.
Loads. Bit of an over-preparer. So it was the course that I was part of had 5, and then you guys, and then I did another institution's 5 mock exams, and then I worked through, I think, 21 previous case studies as well.
Okay. All right, that's a lot.
Just the variants. So I did 21 variants.
Was time management an issue for you?
To fit all of the previous marks in or on the day?
I suppose from both perspectives.
It was towards the end. I mean, you've got to have a really set time of, this day I need to do these 2 variants, and that day I need to do those 2 variants, because how I did it is, I mean, I do the variant under exam conditions, and then I go and I mark it, and then I write with a different color pen the points almost that I missed. So the theories or the application that I didn't mention at all, so that when I'm revising, I just look at those added notes almost, because what I answered, I already know. I need to revise what I didn't know. So I did that. So that was a lot of careful planning, because in between I still had my lecture loaded work, and I was still setting up exams and all of that at work. So this had to all happen after hours. And on the day, I think you can always say more, but I think learning to differentiate what's important and what's your strongest points, and focusing on making those as strong as possible is something that you only learn through practice. So, I mean, that's from doing the mock exams and the previous case studies, because you can ramble on for hours, but are you going to get the marks or the credit for those last points that you're adding?
And then, so time management on the day of the exam was, I mean, you had so much practice, probably you were just, you flew through it, or how did you find it?
No, I found the exam terrible. I mean,
really?
Yeah, no, I walked out and I actually said to my husband, it's going to go one of 2 ways. I've either written down what they wanted and it's going to go well, or I'm going to have to write it again, because I mean, there was no in between. It was either, I think I read it correctly and then I answered it, but if I read it incorrectly, there's very little hope.
Okay.
I actually found it terrible. It was possibly pregnancy hormones as well.
Okay.
No, I wasn't very hopeful, and I'd actually put myself under an insane amount of pressure. So I performed well in the management level case study, and then I sort of dodged the strategic level because I was so scared to write it and not do as well as I'd done in a management level case study, because like you come fourth and then you come nowhere. So like I had to perform. And then I felt I hadn't performed on the day, and then it was tough.
Yeah. Okay. Right. That's interesting. So day of the exam, any tips, tricks that you would offer to students? You're actually sat there for your 3-hour exam.
Most importantly, I would probably say the morning of the exam, leave your books alone. There's nothing that you're going to read or try remember out of your head or look through or glance at the morning of the exam that's going to help you pass. All it's going to do is freak you out for the exam itself. So from probably lunchtime the day before the exam, I put my books away, and that was it. And it also goes a lot for me about not sitting and going, okay, but what can I answer in this type of question? And what am I going to say if they ask me this? Because you don't know what's coming. And as soon as you start running it over in your mind, you're going to chat yourself out of it. So it's really putting your books away lunchtime the day before and taking it on the day as it comes, and question for question. So you can't answer this question while you're thinking of what happened in the previous question, because you can't go back to it. So, it's that probably grit or resilience to say, I've done it, I've answered it, it's over, and focusing on the question at hand, because that's the one that you need to pass at this point in time, and not worrying about what's coming, but how am I going to answer this one? And really taking it point for point. So when I was practicing, I would always prep my answer before the time. And, the course I did work with the theory of 5. So you would write down 5 points, which you felt were the strongest. And then you can always add on later, but you attack those 5 as a priority and make sure that they're strong and backed with decent reasoning. And it's really working through each one at a time, making sure that you're addressing it, making sure that you're writing proper paragraphs that make sense, that are well structured, and then moving on to the next one, and keeping focused on the points that you've written down originally, and not starting to ramble on something that's not relevant.
Sure. What, in your experience, are some of the most common mistakes that students make on the day of in the exam, the case study exam?
I see it a lot with my students, and it's not planning their answers. So they'll start, say for instance, it's a question about impairment of goodwill. So then they'll start answering about what goodwill is. And then as they're writing about what goodwill is, then they start about the calculation of goodwill, and then they start talking about the fair value of assets, and then they start talking about how difficult it is to value the fair value of the assets. But the question was the impairment. But they get so lost in the discussion that they never answer the question. And that you can avoid by saying impairment of goodwill, this is the 5 points I need to discuss, and then continuously referring to them. Am I talking about this one? Am I talking about that one? And not getting lost in that ramble.
Yeah, that's a great point. I suppose it's taking the time to slow down at the start, plan the answer, to ultimately go faster, right?
Yes.
And obviously to go better as well, because some kind of a plan. Great. So CIMA in South Africa, it's really popular there, right?
It is growing in popularity. We had a few years where it was a little bit unknown, but it's definitely now growing in popularity, and it's the auditing firms are buying into the CIMA qualification. And as soon as they start buying in, it's going to, even bolster the popularity even more.
Sure. Okay. So what about your remaining career ambitions, Michelle?
Like what's next?
Sure.
Surviving. So the rest of this semester, I've actually moved. I used to lecture on second year level, and I've now actually moved to third year level. So with 2 kids at home, one of them a 6-month-old, and the new content and the new year group and the exams and the CIMA program, not next 6 months, up until the end of October, I just need to make it. And then next year I'm going to do my master's.
Wow.
And then after my master's, I'm gonna try do my PhD as soon as possible.
Okay. Wow. Okay, you've got a.
I think we've got a topic for my master's. So if that works out, it will be really exciting.
That's
it will
great.
be actually adding value, which is important to me. I don't want to go and do a master's and a PhD on something that doesn't matter. I want to do something that can be used by the industry, not just theory.
Okay, I get you. All right, so you've got a very full calendar by the sounds of it. Yeah, very good. Okay, so I don't have any more questions really. It's been great talking to you, Michelle. They definitely have some great insights, and I think students are really going to appreciate this interview.
Thank you very much.